The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes has just been released. That means we have 5 Hunger Games movies now, and I felt like it was the right time to rank them all. So let's do a quick video of ranking all the Hunger Games movies right now. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. As I said in the intro, we're going to be ranking all 5 Hunger Games movies now that we have Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Check out my review. It's now on the channel. I absolutely thought that movie was great. But to preface before we start, all of the Hunger Games movies I think are actually pretty good to, great to amazing. I love these movies a lot just because, the binge factor to them is just really fun. I've binged them twice this year already. I just love watching all 4 together. Now I'm going to have to watch all 5 together. It's just going to be an extreme, experience. I think it is already an extreme experience with all 4. I've kind of grown up with these movies, these dystopian YA, novel adaptation kind of movies. So it's just so much fun to get a new one after 8 years since Mockingjay Part 2, which was the only actual original one that I saw out of the original 4. I never was able to see the first Hunger Games or any of those. I only saw Mockingjay Part 2 in the theaters and then Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I wish I got to see those original 3. That would have been really cool. But let's start out with our number 5, which is Mockingjay Part 2, the final one in the original Hunger Games series. I don't think this one is bad at all. I think it's just decent. I think that is just way too long for a part 2 kind of a film because if you have a part 1 and part 2, your part 2 is usually shorter because it holds the most action. But this one is a little bit different. I think what they were going for this one was just not it. I think Francis Lawrence, I saw in an interview recently that he actually, kind of regrets making the Mockingjay movies into 2 parts. And I do agree with him. I don't think they should have been 2 parts. If they're going to do a one epic Mockingjay film, they should have just done like a 2.5-hour epic rather than making Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 both like over 2 hours, because Mockingjay Part 2 is like 2 hours and 15 minutes long. I think that's way too long for a Part 2 kind of a film. If you're not like a big film and you have a lot more to cover, because the book isn't that long. The book's not over 500 pages. And it really, Mockingjay Part 2, in my opinion, doesn't get good until like 30 minutes in when they finally go on that journey into trying to infiltrate the Capitol and all that. I think that's when it really gets good because the first 30 minutes just feel like, a recap of Mockingjay Part 1, and we already went through all that stuff. So I really wasn't really with that. That's easily skippable. But what I loved from this movie was the rebuilding of the Peeta and Katniss relationship, because if you saw Peeta in Mockingjay Part 1, he just got tortured. He's absolutely insane. So they're trying to rebuild his relationship with everyone, rebuild his sanity. I really did like that part of the movie, and he does do some evil things in this movie, kills some people, but that's before he gets rebuilt. His mind gets better in that end of the movie. And one of the worst decisions I think Suzanne Collins made with these books and story was Finnick dying. Finnick dying was truly heartbreaking because he became one of my favorite characters in this series, and I wish he stayed alive during the end because he was one of the best characters. He's funny, very likable, and just very powerful character, and he just got killed off by those like weird demons that scared me when I was a kid. I did not know what those things were, but they were pretty evil. And the final 20 minutes is actually really great. Snow dies, and then you have Coin dies, and you have Pete and Katniss finally retire, I would say. They get to live a happy life, live a happy life with the family. And, I just find that very enjoyable. We finally get to a happy place after 4 movies with these characters. And even though I think it is the worst movie, it's definitely not bad. I think it's actually pretty good. Coming in 4th place on my list is Mockingjay Part 1. This just edges out Part 2, just because I like this one just a little bit more. I've seen a lot of people put this one in last or Part 2 in last. I'm putting Part 2 in last than Part 1 just by a little bit because I love the serious aspects of this one just a little bit more, because we know Part 2 is serious also. I think Part 2 just took way too long to get to those points when Part 1 kind of just jumps in. I just love the propaganda aspects of this one were great too. Katniss kind of like going to this new realm. She's never experienced where she is right now. New home. She doesn't fit in. She doesn't like it at all. Doesn't like what Coin is doing. So it's just a very serious, very, government type of film, I would say, from the Capitol. And you also have those terrifying scenes of just Peeta having to be cast, being tortured every single time. He looks different, looks more beat up every single time. in those, kind of recordings that they send all the rebellion. And this one also suffers from being pretty slow. That's why I just disagree that I don't think that these should have been part one and part two just put in one film. The pace would have been brilliant if this was all one film. Might have been a little too fast, but I think being a little fast is better than being too slow of a pace. But still, I thought the script of this one was much better than part two also. And as I said, you get to see Peeta slowly go mad from the torture that he gets from the Capitol. Pretty terrifying. I just can't believe they went for that, especially because it's pretty dark for like a YA type of novel or story. But I think that's a really cool thing that they went for. And I think this holds a truly great supporting performance for Philip Seymour Hoffman. Rest in peace to him. It's sad he didn't get to finish off part two. They used some extra scenes from him in part two, so it's sad he never got to, fulfill part two. But part one, I thought he did an amazing job in the supporting performance. And, this one holds one of my favorite moments in the whole entire franchise when, they go and try to rescue Peeta in the Capitol. It's just, oh my goodness, that's just such a tense moment. And, when they're like flying down from the helicopter, it's so silent. And like, it's so terrifying. It's like that terrifying kind of scary, tense scene because you don't know what's going to happen. And there in the Capitol, we learn lets them do it on purpose because Peeta is just going to attack everyone. And it's especially more terrifying and more, cool of a scene when you have a monologue from Finnick just happening in the background. I thought that was brilliant. Just makes Finnick such a more amazing character than he already is. And as I said, it's also another terrific ending right after that. But another scary part is when Peeta just goes insane and just grabs Katniss by the neck and tries to just kill her. Because that's basically his job, right? Then the Capitol gave him the job and basically tortured him just to go kill Katniss. And his mind is just absolutely like crazy. It's absolutely mush by all the, torture that he had to go through. So he doesn't know what's happening. And that's just his one goal after getting captured, kind of rescued, captured. That was the Capitol's plan, to use Peeta to kill Katniss, but it didn't work for them. Suck it, Capitol. You're not smart. And you have that legendary final shot of Peeta just going mad on the bed, just like flipping upside down, just going crazy, his head just going back on the bed and all that. I would reenact it right now, but I just don't want to go insane at this point. But insane props to Josh Hutcherson in this one. I thought he did an amazing job just playing like the insane role, just going crazy type of role. I thought he did amazing. Part one, I really just have a soft spot for this one just because it's more serious. And those last 30 minutes are just so tense. Now coming in third place is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, our newest entry into the Hunger Games franchise. And surprisingly, this is the only one I read the book for before watching. I read the book like a year ago. I read it in 2 weeks, which is pretty fast for me. It's probably the second fastest I've ever read a book. Dune I read in 1 week, and this one in 2 weeks, just because I was so entertained with this book. I'm not sure if all the other Hunger Games books are this easy to read or go by that fast, but I was just so entertained, because I just love the idea of going into a Snow origin story and watching his slow descent into like the evil nature that he becomes in the original Hunger Games story. And, some people would ask, is there a point for this one? Is it necessary to see the Snow origin? And I think it is. I think it's really necessary to see, where he started from and, was he bad the whole time? The truth was he wasn't bad the whole time. He just has, bad intentions at the beginning, and then he slowly dives into that evilness nature, and, he does kill some people, and then he starts liking it a little bit more. I really just love those kind of stories of the descent into evil, just slowly by slowly. And, this is the one time where I think that this movie should have been split into two different films, because I think the runtime is brilliant in this one. It's about 2 hours and 40 minutes. I loved it for the first like 2/3. The last third of the movie, last act of the movie isn't bad. It's just not as great as the first 2 acts of the movie. That's because, that it happened with the book for me. The last third of the book just is so rushed, so different. It's like a 180 kind of pivot, because you will see if you watch the movie what happens to Snow at that point and what he has to do. But, it's a very rushed storyline. I felt like if you split it into 2 movies, you could add the games in the first movie. In the second movie, you could have had this really cool, like more of a descent into evil in the second movie, kind of like a war epic, because you know what he is doing in that last half of the movie. If you've seen the movie, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but it would have been a great or even amazing 2 movies for that to happen. But you know, I notice how some audiences are getting tired of part 1 and part 2 movies. But if it's done great, then I do love that kind of aspect. So that's just one note for me. You know, I do love the runtime. I think the movie's great. But it would have worked better if it was 2 parts. I love the first half. The Hunger Games part in the movie was so great because the Hunger Games part in the book for this one was easily the most boring part in the book for me. I'll have to reread the book, see if I feel like that. But I will say this is a gorgeous film. Probably one of the most gorgeous Hunger Games films that you have. Probably this one and Catching Fire kind of go side by side for me in the best looking Hunger Games movies. And this one is pretty dark too. One of the darkest ones that they have. Cinematography is great. Costume design is great. Production design is also great. And it does have a standout score. I really did like the score. Rachel Zegler does an amazing job in this. I think this is going to be her first box office hit. Very happy for her in this. But it really sent chills down my spine just hearing her sing in every scene that she did. Those singing scenes are very big for her character, Lucy Gray. So I am happy that they turned out great. And I will say, Viola Davis did steal the show for me. You know, you have some great performances in here, but Viola Davis as the villain is just terrifying, scary, cartoon type of villain, but I adored it. And I just thought this movie was really well done. Francis Lawrence does a great job with all these, but I think that this one is just so gorgeous, so entertaining. Second place, we have the original Hunger Games. You know, I was kind of fiddling with these rankings because I only saw Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes once so far, so I'm not sure if it goes in second place or third place, but I'm going to be safe for now and put the original Hunger Games in the second place because it's the one that started it all. You know, it's the one that started the whole journey, and it's the one that kind of feels the most classic out of all of them, just because it feels, you know, the most nitty gritty. You know, there's hardly any color in this one, probably because they had the lowest budget for this one. That's why it kind of feels like a classic, because it's really kind of a dark and gray film in some instances. It's a great start to the franchise though. Another crazy thing to me, but it's kind of funny also, is that Jack Quaid is in this. I always forget that he's in this, so every time I watch it, I'm just like, that's Jack Quaid from The Boys. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because this is like one of his first roles, I think. And it's just funny that he has a little role in here and he plays like a villainous type of character. I think that's very funny. And I love the first hour of this movie, even though the first hour really doesn't even take place in the Hunger Games at all. They're not fighting at all. It's just like the planning portion. You know, we're in District 12 for the first beginning of it before the reaping, and then you have the planning. I love the first hour. I loved all that planning, just seeing everyone together. Great. And the games are a little disappointing in this one for me because they just move so slowly because no one wants to fight. Katniss really doesn't want to fight. Peeta doesn't know what side he wants to be on in this whole fight. And they probably didn't have much to work with this one. As I said, the budget was probably pretty low for the first Hunger Games. So that's why the games just felt very disappointing until you get to that final, you know, end fight. Even though it took place like just extremely in the dark, they had no lighting for this movie at all. And it feels the most real to me, probably because of that, like, no lighting, low budget-esque feel. It just feels like this could actually happen, but it's kind of terrifying that it does feel like that. But it has a great ending, and it just feels the most classic. I gotta say, it's not the best Hunger Games. Is still fighting with that second and third place for me, but I'm gonna keep it in second for now. Coming in first place and being the best Hunger Games movie for me is Hunger Games: Catching Fire. I'll easily say this is the best one. I think a lot of people could agree with me. Like 90% of the population would agree that this is the best Hunger Games. This is the one that I wish I saw in theaters because it's just so epic to watch it. And just to think of watching this in IMAX when you have that, you know, they're rising up, Katniss is rising up and slowly expands in the IMAX ratio. I think that's brilliant for Francis Lawrence as a director to make that decision. Just have the whole Hunger Games sequence in IMAX. That's terrific. I really do wish I saw this in IMAX. Would have been incredible. Would have been an epic experience. But this one introduces 3 amazing characters because you got Finnick, you got Heavensbee, and you got Beetee. Some amazing characters that I just loved going on with during this whole series. But you, of course, had Philip Seymour Hoffman sadly pass away, as I said. But his character in this one, Heavensbee, he was great. You know, he's an inside man at the Capitol. I thought that was just a devious plan. I just love that character so much, how he was kind of in on it the whole time. And you kind of never really found that out until the end. You never really could have guessed that, which is pretty interesting. I loved how they made it like that. And I feel like this one has the best pace out of all the Hunger Games movies because, you know, you kind of start with, you know, Katniss and Peeta are a couple in this one. They got to keep that going and stuff. and they have to travel around to every district and talk about, themselves and all that, keep kind of the peace going, but they don't want to. I love that first beginning of it, kind of feels so serious and all that. Then you get to the Hunger Games aspect, and that is just more epic because of the increased budget on this one, probably, and just all the colors. This one is so much, there's so much light in this one compared to the first one. It's so funny if you compare the two, but the games are just so much more epic in this one. The challenges that are going on with this one, because you got the monkeys, you got the spinning circle in the middle, kind of like the clock as they call it, and you got the jabberjays. The jabberjays are just intense. Then you got like that, that kind of border that comes around and just burns their skin. A lot of intense challenges in this one. I would not be able to survive these challenges for this one. And I really like the idea of this story a lot. All it being the winners going into the Hunger Games from each district is kind of a horrible plan from the Capitol, because you have a lot of your winners are losing, but it was awesome to watch all these winners and stuff for like lore purposes. You get to see all the winners of the previous Hunger Games. That was really fun. You just see all the best fighters go at each other. Some of the best stuff to happen in these movies, I think, because I think the idea of another Hunger Games, just a regular Hunger Games, might have been overplayed, and how would you include Katniss and Peeta? So this is such an interesting idea. I just love the best people going against the best people. Who will fight, who will win, who will fight it out. Then you have like the team ups in the Hunger Games. I always thought that people teaming up in the Hunger Games was kind of stupid at times, but it's smart if you do it right. And no pun intended, but it's an electrifying final minutes, as I said, that I wish I saw in theaters, because it's insane when Katniss shoots the arrow and just shoots at the top of the dome, I guess I would say, explodes it all. And that's crazy. She gets pulled up by, a crane, in just amazing shots of just the whole, Hunger Games burning down, catching fire, as you'd say in the title. And I will say, with all of these movies, the final 15 to 20 minutes of each of these movies is so great. It's probably the best part of these movies, just because of the stakes that you have, the serious moments that you have. And I just feel like those scenes in those final 15 minutes of each movie are just so exciting, but so devastating at times, because you have those cliffhangers, but sometimes you have the happy ending, like part 2. Part 1 is my favorite kind of cliffhanger. And also, I just think that, Francis Lawrence did a great job directing all of these. Directing 5 films is pretty tough. Taking a break after 8 years and going back to this franchise is probably pretty tough for him, but I think he did a great job in all of them. Costumes were great in all of them. Production design, cinematography, outstanding. But I had the best time with Catching Fire. I feel like it's just the easiest film to watch, easiest film to put on, and probably just the funniest one at times, but it is the best one for me. But that's my Hunger Games ranking after Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Leave your ranking down below of all 5 movies, and leave your thoughts on the newest one, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.